Welcome to Growthcast, insights for B2B leaders, where we uncover the strategies, stories, and solutions driving growth across B2B leaders. I'm a host, Alex, and in each episode, we'll be diving deep with industry experts in today's growing competitive landscape. Today, we have Roland and Tina. Nice to have you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being a guest today. For our audience's benefit, do you mind doing a brief introduction from both of your sides?
I think we'll start with the ladies.
Ladies first, as we said, and thank you to you, Alex, for having us here. My name is Tina Madsen Sandström. Short version, I've been working in the pharmaceutical industry since mid-80s. I started my career in a Danish pharmaceutical company where I touched down with everything from being a trainee, sales, marketing, administration, ending up being the CEO. Stayed there for nearly 18 years. And then after that, our own journey started, which I believe we will come back to later on. So yeah, that was the short version. Long experience and abroad as well.
I can imagine there's been a lot of change in the pharma industry over the last 40, 30 years that you've been in the industry.
Absolutely. Also
Great.
believe
We can definitely cover that. We can cover that in a second. And Roland, yourself?
Yes, Roland Sandström. And yeah, I have a background of 50 years in the pharmaceutical industry. I came from the university and my idea was to stay in research. My specialty is marketing and organization. But as a poor student, I found out if I asked to be employed in a pharmaceutical company, they took me to an interview and they paid me a day fee and a travel and a good dinner. So I put it in the process. I made a lot of interviews with the industry to have some money for the studies. And then finally I ended up with Vida, and I was a product consult for many years. And I ended up as the CEO of the Swedish part. It's 50 years ago. So I have really been experienced a lot of things happening in our area.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. So you both kind of rose the ranks to CEO. Tell me about this journey from the start to where you are now.
Well, indeed. I mean, when we started, the pharmaceutical area was no failure. Whatever you did, it went straight up. It was more or less impossible to fail, which has, in a way, been a part of the pharmaceutical industry for a long time, and that's not a good record. But I mean, everything was locked in by the big pharma industries. I mean, they have departments for everything, and the resources needed to run a company was very much hidden in the big pharma. Not like today, where you have the possibility to reach competence wherever it is placed in the world.
Yeah. And how was it back then competing with some of the largest in the world, AstraZeneca's, GSK's, etc.? What was that like?
I think when we started our first company, VitaFlow, in year 2000, I do not see ourselves as a competitor to those big companies. I think our strength at that time and maybe also today is to find niche areas where we can play a more important role or act quicker. Today, everything goes very, very quickly. Didn't go that quickly in year 2000, but the advantage of being small and being able to take quick decisions, I think that makes the difference at that time and is still doing.
We really didn't have many resources. Small, we were forced to use small is beautiful. Indeed, it was. But as Tina said, we could compensate a lot of less resources with speed. Normally, it took from we had a first contact with the producer until we launched the product less than 10 months, which is quite fast in the pharmaceutical industry. So, yeah, we were small, but today, I mean, it's sometimes even a positive thing being small. I mean, look at the big pharmaceutical companies today. Well, many of them, they don't produce. They buy the production facilities around the world. The research is sometimes in cooperation with smaller startup research companies. What they have left is a big envelope. They are banks, they can finance and they can do things which the smaller companies can't. But that's the only thing differs today, because the resources is available any place in the world.
But that might also be the reason that today you see many big pharma companies operating within what we call OTC, or the counter without prescription, where you're allowed to do marketing against consumer. Here they have the advantages, as Roland said, of the big envelope, while when it comes to business to business, from industry to hospitals, doctors, and other decision makers, then it's not only money talks, then it's on another level.
No, that makes sense. Sorry,
the problem is that the world was very much bigger 50 years ago, quote, because you didn't have access to what we have now, talk to each other, look at each other. We have telephones. We didn't even have the mobile phones. They came a little later. So taking a trip to visit the producer was a big investment, indeed. It took a long time for a registration process, and all the files coming almost filled the lorry. But today, in a minute, you have all the material you need. You can have a journey all over the world. We can meet people in 5 continents at the same time. And it's cheap. It's not expensive. It gives small companies the possibility to be local. They can stay local and use the knowledge they have locally. At the same time, they have access to the global knowledge and the global contact net.
Correct. No, that makes complete sense. And if we fast forward to the year 2000, you started your first company. How was that? Why did you start the company? Where did the idea come from?
Of course, it's always difficult in the beginning, and both Roland and I came from another position. I think to be entrepreneur, you need to be open to have what they say, dirty hands. You cannot just sit behind the desk and believe everything is sold. We were having a small organization, less resources as we were used to, but it was also if you have a vision and if you believe there's something you can do, it was also a big challenge. And I think my own wording in Danish, if I should translate that to English, is the passion getting things moved. And I think that's some of what I have kept all the years. As far as it's fun, then you can make things moved. Of course, there are challenges, but the day you don't believe it's fun anymore, then I don't think you will get things moved in the way you should do.
As Tina said, being forced to do everything, just not sitting in an office and make beautiful plans that nobody understands. We had to be out meeting the customers, the doctors, the nurses. And really, this is when we learned that the most important person in an organization is the salesperson, because without sale, we don't exist. Many times we have noticed it, and probably we have been part of that idea. You have a marketing department who produce wonderful, theoretically beautiful plans of how to behave on the market. And then the guys and girls going out on the market, well, they have to behave different, because the theory and the practice doesn't not really are the same. But as they usually say, the military say, if the map and the reality is not identical, you have to count on the map. But this is not reality. This is something that, without any doubt, complicates things. You have to look at the reality and how the real world behaves.
Yeah. No, definitely. That makes complete sense. And you guys mentioned it, as an entrepreneur, you have to get your hands dirty and move forward. I'm sure there was especially a lot of challenges within the first business when you were growing. What were some of those challenges and how did you overcome them?
I think that the biggest challenge was resources, money, because I think everybody starting a business would like to do everything from day one. But as we started from scratch, with no product on a running business, we have to build everything up from the scratch. And things takes time. I remember some of the area metabolic diseases where we worked in. I was visiting all centers in the Nordic 1 year without any sale. But of course, that ended up being an investment for the future. But when you did it, it was not that funny.
Yeah.
Yes, you start from scratch, as Tina said. We have started 6 companies, but the scratch are different in a way. We have been managed to increase the scratch,
The
if you understand
the lower
the
level.
of the scratch. But of course, you have to accept, as an entrepreneur, you need a lot of enthusiasm, and that's good because that runs the wheel. Sometimes too much resources make you a little lazy. In fact, I think it's a positive thing, and as I said, it's not the amount, the total amount of resources, it's how you use the resources you have that is the important part. And Tina quoted without mentioning it, things takes time. The Danish philosopher Pete Hein, he said it, things takes time. And he also said something else, which I very often quote, and we have been very happy to have, is he said, specialists have their specialist fun, telling us things can't be done. And we have run into those quotes many, many, many times. I'm happy to say, very often the specialists are wrong.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. And you mentioned you've had a few companies, right? You've started them, etc. What would you say was the biggest challenge across all of them? Of course, you've started from scratch with all of them at different levels. What would you say was the common challenge and biggest challenge across all of them, no matter if you started as a new business and even when you started the sixth one, there was the same challenge there?
That was a tricky one. I think as we don't have a big organization, that's not our goal, and we'll never ending up having a big organization. But to combine specialist with generalist is one of our, I think, forces. So to build up the organization with the right persons, I think that's the platform for our success. Of course, together with our strategy. But today, it's not easy to find persons not being working in big pharma, being nearly brainwashed, and persons like that will never survive, you can say, or never perform in the way we would like them to do. And not having a big organization, then we need to have the synergies, use the synergies we can have combining specialist with the generalist, because then we can perform much more.
Building an organization based on only specialists, first of all, it will be a big organization. Look at Big Pharma. There is a lot of specialists. As we couldn't afford it, we have to try to have people with a possibility, a helicopter view, or whatever you say. They in the classical way in the pharmaceutical industry, you had a rep, and the rep was only the salesperson. Rep very often was very well educated, was in marketing and other things, but they were only doing the visit to the doctors. And then there was another level, making the plans, telling them how to behave, and another level, specialists. But those reps, they could be used so much more. I mean, they really have the knowledge of the market. They have the theoretical background very often to use it and to make the plans. So why not letting the use the actors, the reps also make the plans because they know them much better than the theorist sitting in the department being a specialist.
Definitely. That makes complete sense, and I like that you've created that synergy in order to be successful. And before the podcast, of course, we've already discussed you've had multiple exits from companies. Many business owners, of course, start their business, they view it as their baby, and it's hard to let go. How did you know at each exit it was time to, okay, it's time for us to sell the business, we can let it go of it now?
I think it's very often based on
Coincidence.
coincidence, yes. Well, the first company was a Vitaflow, and we were approached by a company on the Norwegian stock market to buy a tech company who had an interest. And we started the discussion, and the discussion ended, and it started again. And suddenly we were agreed, and we sold the company, but we stayed with the company for 1.5 years. After that, I mean, when you work globally, you have a lot of contacts, and suddenly we were approached by new producers, and we had some new challenges. So we started another company with the experience we have had from Vitaflow. We started Pharma Scandinavia. I think it was the first company we sold after 7 years. And this other company we started
2010.
2010.
But with a little other setup, because at this stage we were also having the possibility to develop and be a sub-producers to develop our own range in some specific competence areas, giving us, I think, another challenges and something else to focus on, also for Roland and myself. So I think that was the new one we added in, and then we, after a couple of years, also started up in a business in US and expanded to Canada and were having export to 10 countries. So suddenly going from being a Nordic pharmaceutical specialty company, then we were still a Nordic pharmaceutical company, but we were also having a US company, and we were also running export to 10 countries.
Yeah.
We kept the experience we had from the small organization. We still give priority to generalists. We try to hire people having an experience, and that's very, very important, I think, when you start up a new organization. Because again, if you are a specialist, you also have to build a little room with your knowledge. Everybody coming into that room with another knowledge is a threat. And so that's always because you need the specialists. But when you start to build it up, we kept the idea of trying to find generalists, even though we do need the specialists too, but not building up on the base of specialist competence.
But I think in all the companies we have had, you can mention that maybe 3 keywords, maybe more, but as we said, generalist versus specialist, and then the project-oriented organization, and then our international network. I think that has been common positive wordings in all aspects when from scratch to where we are today.
Yes, building the silos, building the classical organization with a lot of level. I think that's the problem to have a flexible organization, ad hoc, to this purpose, ad hocracy. That's what we're trying to do to work with. And most of the tasks we are doing in our companies has always been on a project base, because a project is so much more effective in our ideas, because you have a defined time for it, you have a defined budget, and everybody involved in the project, they can see the end of the project already. So
and they learn something.
Yeah.
And they have the possibility to develop themselves instead of only working in a small box.
So in some project, you are the project leader. and in other projects are a member of the project group. So when you're leaving a project, you leave it with knowledge you have been experienced from your colleagues, and you bring it into your next project. And that's what you have, a learning organization, I think, ad hocity. But again, you must not be too specialized, because then you protect your own knowledge. And why giving away your knowledge? Then you're not a specialist then.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's really interesting. I like that you guys do it more project-based, setting timelines, which makes you more effective. If you know you have a long time horizon, usually you're less effective. So I like that approach a lot.
Yeah.
And then fast forwarding a bit more, now you've started GHN. Tell me a bit more about that. Tell the audience why you came across this after selling multiple businesses.
Yeah, the POA group, both POA North America and POA Scandinavia, one of our distributors in UK was a big Irish company, a research company, and also pharmaceutical company. And they were representing our products in UK and Ireland. But they were also, at the same time, interested to have a bridge outside UK. It was during the discussions, yes. So they were looking into Scandinavia, and we started a discussion. So we sold the company. Well, it was 7 years since we started it, so it was time. And we stayed with them 2 years to transfer the knowledge. But then we said, well, maybe we should retire, at least me. So we took a long trip to Latin America, visiting friends, and well, cleaned the brain.
And then the pandemic came. Suddenly, we were arriving home to Denmark the day before the Prime Minister closed Denmark because of COVID. And even though we said we should not have another pharmaceutical company, we were having our network. And I think that was the trigger for our new company, GHN Pharma AB, our international network group, which today also ended up being the mother company for another two companies, which was not planned to be, GHN Pharma Nordic and GHN Pharma Metabolic. So from going on, considered to be retired, to starting an international consulting company, suddenly we ended up having in total 3 new companies during 2021.
Yes,
Wow.
GHN network, the platform, today is covering 90 countries on 5 continents. We have members on 5 continents. And again, going back to what we discussed earlier with the possibility with the technique, like talking to you today, once a month we have a meeting. And here you have members from Australia, Latin America, US, most of the countries in Europe together at the same time. If someone had told me that this was a possibility 50 years ago, I hadn't believed it. It has been science fiction. But today we do. We talk, we have lectures, we have discussions, we run projects. So this is amazing. When we started this group, many of us have never met in real life.
Yeah.
We met the first time 2 years after the start in a meeting where people come together. But it worked. So the digital work really helped us to start this organization. As Tina said, suddenly there came in offers from our contacts, and they said, well, it's not time for you to retire. You have to help us with this and this. And then we started GHN Pharma Nordic and GHN Pharma Metabolic. So the GHN network group is around 5 years. And
the risk was, we are on our 4th year now for both the Nordic and Metabolic organization.
And taking up a discussion we had earlier, we have taken the experience with us, because when we started this GHN group now, in the beginning, we are hiring people above the age of 50.
Not below.
Not below. Because we would like to have the experience. Of course, we will bring in younger person, but we will then use the knowledge of these elderly. Well, you're not elderly when you're 50 today, but anyway, we try to prioritize the experience, because the experience also gives you the possibility to be a generalist.
Cool. No, that makes sense. And how do you tackle, of course, you have people with more experience, but in today's digital age, things are changing a lot more. I'm seeing even 18-year-olds know more about technology than myself, and I'm considered young. So how are you battling that in GHN of taking some expertise from the younger generation as well?
I think the way we are working, as we are working a lot in projects, I think it goes in a natural way, because, as you say, a young person might be able to help educate an elderly person in some IT sectors, but the other way around, when it comes to social competence, knowledge maybe either within a specific pharmaceutical area or then the elderly. So I think to use again the synergy in the organization, I think that's make the difference, and it become a natural way to help each other, because in one project you're depending on your colleagues, and in another project your colleagues is depending on your help. So if there is a kind of firewall between the flow of help, then it will be very visible in the organization, and then it will be very easy for either Roland or myself to say we have a problem. Yeah.
It's better that they come in and say we have a problem. That's much because they are closer to the problem than sometimes we are. That's very important.
Definitely. That's really interesting. And moving on, we're at the start of 2025. What trends are you seeing for 2025 and the future of pharma, given your plethora of experience in the industry over the last 50 years?
I mean, to start with the first, it was local. First of all, starting a pharmaceutical company was difficult 50 years ago. As I said, most of the resources you needed was locked in the big pharma. Today it's free. I mean, we can use a specialist, not hired by us, but as a consultant sitting in Melbourne or in Buenos Aires or on the next street. There is no difference because of the technical equipment we have. We can be global and we can act on a global market. We are not only forced to stay in the region or in the country, but we can, as a smaller company, be international, which is much more fun.
But I think when it comes to all the regulatory issues, you can talk about global and local, and still there's a lot of things to be done in another way. I think the last 5-10 years we have had pharmacovigilance. That's a EU regulative, but then again, then they split it down to national. Things are very time consuming, they become very expensive, and having all those extra costs added on your organization. And then at the other hand, everybody would like the prices to go down. So I think we are very close now to a limit. See how can we balance those things, because continue adding cost and then continue having the government saying lower the price, suddenly there's a gap. And I know that in EU now there's some regulation saying that try to look at pharmaceuticals on EU base instead of on a local, but it's a suggestion, and I think one will consider how many years it will take for them to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Certainly it is. But yeah, of course there are regulations. But again, you don't need to have them on board. You can work in a virtual organization today. You could have a fixed organization of people, but you can expand it. Our producers are, as we regard it, a very important part of our organization, and very often it's a part of the projects. The project can be in your company, but also have members outside your company. We have access to a lot of knowledge by opening up and using this technical equipment. And of course, the ChatGPT. We are using it for contracts, for marketing investigation, and we are investing, being a smaller company, quite heavily to build up our own chatbot. Because as we very often say, I mean, we have seen the train, but it doesn't help us if we stay on the station. We have to go on and stay as far up as possible in this new trend. Because if you don't do this, you're left, and it will be very difficult to catch up. You have to be in the front, and that's the good thing being small, because we don't have 15 levels to decide. We decide very quickly. We have only 2 levels in our organization.
Of course, no, that makes complete sense. And then final thoughts for the podcast today. What's one piece of advice you have for other leaders looking to grow their business now, given all of the knowledge you've possessed over the last couple of decades?
If you start anew, use your enthusiasm. Don't start new companies or projects just to earn money. Do it because you think it's so fun. Because being an entrepreneur is extremely exciting, and it gives you a lot back. If you earn money on the other side, well, that's a plus factor. But don't start it because of the money.
But you also have to understand it's not an 8 to 5 job to start a company. It's a full-time job, 7/24. And either you like it or you don't. But I think that's also something to consider.
We have had a saying all the years regarding what we're doing. We say, excuse us, we didn't know it was impossible.
Yeah, that's a very good saying. Perfect. Well, thanks so much for all the insights you've given today. Do you have any last words, or how can the audience reach out to you guys before we end them?
We have our websites, ghnpharma.com or ghnnordic.com, and those we are reading every day. So it's just to pass a chat if you would like to stay in contact with either Roland or myself.
They say the future is not what it used to be. It's much more exciting. We love to take these discussions, so you're all welcome.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being guests on today's episode of Growthcast, and to the audience, see you on the next episode. Bye.